So I am joined today by George Donnelly, solicitor from Dundee, who I'm sure a lot of people will know and recognise. Hello, George.
Hello, Edith. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Fine.
Good.
Enjoying consultancy.
Good stuff. I'm sure you are. A bit of time to yourself for once.
Absolutely, and ready for this ordeal.
Not at all. You'll be absolutely fantastic, George. We're so grateful to you for agreeing to do it, and I know that you'll be a great guest. So let's just crack on and ask you the first question, which is, if you weren't a lawyer, George, what would you be?
This will surprise a lot of people, Edith, but I think I might have been a celebration cake decorator.
Really?
Well, from leaving school to finishing university, every holiday I worked in this bakery in Dundee, and I was promoted to my last post as a celebration cake decorator, which for a man who can't put a plug on, who can't do anything with his hands, was remarkable. And I took to it like a duck to water. And a lot of people on the night shift where these cakes were decorated said the only reason I got the job was because I was the only one on the night shift who could spell anniversary. But I was there doing the iced rosebuds and the happy birthday Edith on the icing on the cake. And it was great fun.
I bet.
Probably wouldn't have ended up as one, but it was great fun.
I'm sure. And so did you just kind of learn on the job, or did you have to do a course?
Yeah. No, we started icing things like apple turnovers and moved on to, this is for Donna Foster and Moira Mackenzie, domino cakes.
Right.
And then we were a man down one night, so I got to do the basic stuff and then moved on. It was astonishing.
Amazing. And what was your finest creation, George? Have you got one that sticks out?
Definitely the 5-tier wedding cake. That was, on the turntable, icing it, spinning it round with the spacer that got the wavy lines on it. And Edith, I was a pro.
Fantastic. I would not have thought you would come out with that, George.
And if you'd ever seen me trying to do anything else with my hands, you wouldn't have believed it either. Genuinely, I can't put a plug on.
Fantastic. All right. Question number 2 is, did you have a nickname at school? And if so, what was it and why were you given it?
I didn't really. People who didn't like me obviously would call me Specky, but that just led to fights. I remember in the football team when I was playing in midfield, which I wasn't very good at. It was better when I was back at the back four kicking people. Somebody called me Dynamo, but I think, Edith, that was sarcasm rather than a nickname. So I wouldn't be able to claim a full-time nickname, I'm sorry.
No. Have you ever had a nickname since then?
When we go to Spain to play golf, we all have sort of nicknames. And I remember Gregor Murray, who's now a sheriff, he's in charge of producing the T-shirts, the tour T-shirts. And one year he gave us all names. And I was just boringly Dode, which is just the vernacular for George, obviously. So, yeah, not really. I've never attracted a nickname. Never been interested.
Oh. Okay. Question 3, which you might have answered already, but I suspect there's something else up your sleeve. What was your first job?
That was as a Saturday boy in a butcher shop.
Okay.
But down in the basement, making the sausages, and it was horrible. I lasted 2 weekends.
Oh.
It wasn't for me. It was horrible. And then I got a job driving a milk float.
Okay.
That lasted one night because I crashed it. And I had to limp back to the dairy, and I was told not to come back. So there was never a great deal of success until I went to the bakery when I was 17.
Oh, fantastic. The butcher, the baker,
Yeah.
and the
I've never been the
celebration
candlestick
maker.
maker. I'll do that. That's on my bucket list.
And tell me about the butcher. Was that, were you just having to, like, what were you doing down in the basement?
I come from Lochee, which is an area of Dundee. It was described on Radio Tay as a little village lying to the west of Dundee. They say you had to get visas to get into it. And in Lochee High Street, there was a butcher shop. And I just saw a notice in the window, Saturday boy needed. I thought it was a delivery boy.
Right.
And I went in and he said, yeah, start on Saturday. I didn't know. I thought I was going to deliver stuff. The next thing I'm in this dingy basement, being handed lumps of meat to put through a sausage machine and trying to fill it into these horrible
things. No.
And it was stinking and it was horrible. Horrible.
Dear.
I told my mum never, ever to go back to that butcher's.
Really?
I suspect they were all the same, but it was horrible.
You found your forte at the Celebration Cake Bakery.
Absolutely. But I'd worked through the whole ranks, Edith. I did the bread, the rolls. And I ruined 480 dozen rolls one summer. I forgot to switch a machine on. And then the next year I went back, they said, you'll not do that again, will you? I said, no, I did. So in my career, I've ruined 960 dozen rolls.
Goodness me. And so, I mean, do you bake still, George?
No. I keep telling my wife I was an industrial baker. So
right.
There's no point me making wee cakes in the house or anything.
No,
I fed the thousands.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. All right. Question number 4, George, is what do you recall of your first court experience?
I've always told this story, and it's a true story. I went up to the Sheriff Court in Dundee, and it was Sheriff Cox, who I'll come on to later. And it was a totting up case for a motor mechanic. And of course, I made the big plea, and I ended up by saying, and of course, if he's disqualified, he won't lose his license. I meant to say he won't lose his job. And he leant forward and he went, oh yes, he will. And I thought, oh, I want to be a conveyancer. Let me out of here. So the place was all giggling, and it was a case of there's the new Daphne on the block. Get him out of here. Oh. That was my first ever court appearance.
Oh.
It never got much better after that.
Nonsense. All right. Question number 5 is who is or was your most inspiring colleague?
It was definitely Derek Lawson, who, when I went to Lawson Coull Duncan, I was their first apprentice at that time. And there was the 2 senior partners, Fetis Lawson and Jim Coull, Jim's daughter, Catherine, and Derek, who was Fetis's son. And Derek took me under his wing, and he took me everywhere. He took me up to court. He introduced me to sheriffs, to fiscals, to sheriff clerks. At that time, of course, all the divorces were in the Court of Session. So he took me through to Edinburgh and introduced me to counsel. He was just fantastic to me. As you know, I came from a wee working class house in Lochee. My mum was a cleaner and my dad worked in the jute mills. And Derek and company were all Dundee High School people, but for some reason they took me in, and they were all of them were magnificent to me. But I worked hand in glove with Derek, and he was he really did show me the ropes. He was a very, very clever boy, a very good solicitor. He actually gave it up to become a minister in the Church of Scotland. Right. And he now lives in France, but he's peripatetic. He's been the minister in Bahamas and Malaga, and he's have robes, will travel as our Derek, but great guy, Edith. He was great with me.
Oh,
brilliant.
Fantastic. That's great. You've got that memory of him and him just kind of helping you launch your career.
Yeah. And I remember him coming to my door on a Saturday and saying, I'm giving up, because if I want my own charge, once I'm going to do a Doctor of Theology at St Andrews, and I've got to do it now to make sure I'm the age to get a parish of my own. And he was a great loss. He was great, smashing fella, as well as a very good lawyer. Great guy.
Oh, fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
Question number 6 is, how do you define success, George?
I think probably 2 elements to that. I think success is you're able to provide for your family and look after them. And by God, we've had to do that with Leo, the grandson, recently. But secondly, professionally, I think success would be if you had the respect of your colleagues. I think if the bench accepts what you say, and I think if the colleagues with whom you're working who are on the other side of the table from you respect and accept what you say, then that's, in my mind, success. That would do me.
Yeah, absolutely. Good answer, George. Question number 7 is, where is your favourite holiday destination, if you can remember what a holiday is?
Yeah, we've lost a few in the past 12 months, obviously. I would say Italy. I love Italy, and I love the usual suspects. I love Rome, I love Florence, but I have a great soft spot for Sorrento and the Amalfi Coast. I think it's beautiful. I could settle there. I love Taormina in Sicily, which was voted the world's most beautiful small town. It's just tremendous. Mm-hmm. And I also have great memories of Riva and Lake Garda. So Italy as a whole, and those places in particular.
Lovely. How nice to be there right now, eh? Or, well, I don't know what the weather would be like. Probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be worse than this.
I know.
I'm going to take the dog out after this, and I've got my golf waterproofs ready.
I think this morning, I'm sure it was kind of sleeting, and then there was a flash of lightning at one point. I don't know what's going on out there, but it's really bitterly cold.
There was thunder, snow, and oh, it's horrible. So yeah. I'm going to brave it after I've said cheerio to you, Ida.
Oh, my. Oh. Okay, question number 8. What is your most memorable case?
The most memorable case would have to be HMA against Simpson, which was the cold case review of the Templeton Wood murders in Dundee. It was a murder in 1980, and Vincent Simpson was the prime suspect then. He was never charged, but I acted for him in 1980. And then in 2005, they had a cold case review, and lo and behold, he was arrested at his house in Camberley and brought back to Dundee, where he appeared, and I acted for him, and that was literally 25 years after I first acted for him. It was a case where the police and the Crown proceeded on what was called LCN DNA, which is low copy number. Mm-hmm. And it was a scientist in Wetherby who said that he could amplify a tiny amount of DNA and get results. But I instructed Mark Stewart and Ashley Edwards as the defence team. And we went to Cambridge University, etc., on courses about LCN DNA. And we took them on the science and won. Mm-hmm. We even got an opinion from the FBI, who had to give us it informally because their charter doesn't allow them to do defence work. Right. But they said it's a very, very good investigative tool, but it's really no use at trial because of contamination. Because if there's any contamination, it corrupts the whole process. Yeah. And that's really, the trial lasted for 7 weeks in Edinburgh in 2008. It took 3 years to get it to trial. But during that time, Edith, the bail condition for Mr. Simpson was he wasn't allowed to enter Scotland. So we had to get sanctioned every so often to go to London to see him.
Right.
And it was fantastic. We were jumped on airplanes the way you jumped on buses. And we to be fair, the Legal Aid Board were brilliant. They gave us sanction as and when we wanted it for a lot of things. And as I said, it was a 7-week trial. he was acquitted. And interestingly enough, the same concept was used in the Omagh bombing trial. Remember the atrocity in Omagh?
Yeah.
And the same scientist gave evidence about LCN, DNA. Our decision came out, the jury, I think, came back on a Thursday, I think, if I remember. And it was a Mr. Justice Campbell who was sitting alone in Northern Ireland. And he issued his decision, having taken it to Avizandum on the Friday. And we always thought he was waiting to see what happened with our jury before he issued his decision. But his decision reflected the concerns that that Mark Stewart put across to the jury, and the Omagh bomber as charged. He was also acquitted. So that was a brilliant, fascinating case.
Absolutely.
And way out of the ordinary. Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. And of course, the link from 25 years ago made it a wee bit more special as well. So it was good fun.
Sounds it. Sounds very interesting. Yeah. Good stuff. Question 9, George, is who has had the biggest influence on your career in the law? I think that would have to be the aforementioned Sheriff Graham Cox in Dundee. He was one hell of a character. Very, very clever man, very shrewd man, but of that generation where there were still real characters. And he was a guy who, they said if you could survive in his court, you could go to any court in the land. Because nobody could do anything to you that he wouldn't have done before. He was a great guy. But again, one of these guys, Edith, whose bark was worse than his bite. He was a real, genuine sheriff. You know, all the old lags would want their trial to go before him, because if there was a reasonable doubt, he would exercise it. Right. If he convicted, he would come down heavily on them. They knew that, but they always knew there was a chance. You know, and he hated lying police officers, and he had a list of them. And when that officer came in, no matter what trial it was, if he was on the list, he would just put his pen down and wouldn't note anything at all. And if they were corroborating, for example, he would acquit and just say that, I believe Officer A implicitly, but to convict, I have to believe something from him, and I can't do that. Honestly. And he used to, if he caught a policeman lying, he would say to the second one before he put him on oath, are you a married man? Yes. Do you have children? Yes. A mortgage? Yeah. Do you like your job? Oh, yes. Would you like to keep it? Or would you like to go to jail? Because we found him lying. And if I find you lying, two of you will be going to jail. And I've seen officers faint, truly faint, because they didn't know, obviously, what he was on about. He didn't know what the lie was meant to be. But he was a guy who ran his court brilliantly. I've seen him sit at 7 o'clock at night to finish trials. Telling the fiscal at 6 o'clock, get cracking, get going. And there was a fiscal in Dundee called Ken Mackay. It was a two-cop breach. And he was at 6 o'clock, Ken said, I'm moving to adjourn due to the lateness of the hour. Cox said, just get on with it. So they called the case, PF Dundee against Joe Bloggs. And I stood up, I said, I appear and he'd adhered to his plea of not guilty. Ken Mackay said, accepted. Closed his file and walked out. Cox was going mental. He used to bring his golden retriever to work every day. And one day it escaped from his chambers and ran onto the bench in the High Court and sat on Lord Dunpart's lap. He was a character, Ida. Yeah. Oh, he sounds it.
He was the boy. And when he died, he donated his body to medical science because he didn't believe in giving money to undertakers.
Oh my goodness! What tales of that? That's amazing.
And that's only scratching the surface, I promise you.
Yeah, fantastic, brilliant. Question number 10 is, what is the funniest or most memorable court moment for you, George?
It was one, Edith, I was a spectator in. I wasn't in the case, I'm pleased to say. And a solicitor was representing a female on a drink drive charge, pleading to it. And she'd been up at a conference in Dundee in a hotel with her boss, a professional conference. And this solicitor, for whatever reason, got into his head that they were away for a dirty weekend together. And he as much said that in his plea, much to the consternation of the accused, who of course was hopping up and down in the dock. But even worse, her husband was in the public benches. And he stood up and was shouting, "What the hell's going on here?" His wife was shouting back, saying, "I didn't tell him this, that's not true." And the solicitor just blindly went on. He put two and two together and made five. I think possibly from his own experiences, that the two of them were up having an affair, and presented the plea without instruction on that basis, on the basis, because they had had an argument, but it had been something about the conference or the work. But he had thought they'd had a lover's tiff, and that was how he presented it, and why the woman got in the car and proceeded to drive down the driveway of the hotel. It was the funniest thing ever to see people's reaction. I suppose it wasn't funny for them, but it was funny for everybody else.
Okay.
And he just blathered on.
Oh, did he? Good grief. Oh, my.
Honestly, it was a hoot. It was a hoot. It really was brilliant.
Question number 11 is, we all make mistakes. What did you learn from a professional error?
To try not to make it again. Because, as you say, we've all done it, and the real sin was if you did it again. Going back to Derek Lawson, I remember as an apprentice, I had to take statements for our Edinburgh correspondence in a divorce case about adultery. It was a setup of, obviously, the couple had gone to stay with her brother, and that was provided the corroboration, but they were all going away to live in Canada or something. And I took these statements, sent them through to Edinburgh, but I forgot to ask the date that they'd stayed together. And that was crucial, of course. And the guy from Drummond's was a boy called Hamish Miller, who was mental. Hamish Wilson. And he kicked up merry hell. But again, Derek protected me, and his advice was, don't do it again. Make sure you don't do it again. And that's been my credo ever since. So, yeah, oh my Lord, I've made a mistake, but I'll not do it next week.
I think that's it, George, isn't it? You've got to make a bit of a fool of yourself sometimes to actually learn the lesson. Watching somebody else do it doesn't work.
And the lesson is learning the lesson, Edith.
Yeah, I know, that's true.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Oh, definitely.
Question number 12. What do you do to stay well, George?
I know the camera puts 10 pounds on you, so they say, but in the past year I've lost 1.5 stone, and now that I'm not working so often, as much golf as I can get in. I've got a 6-year-old black Labrador who's mental, so she's out all the time, walking with her. Not working, Edith, you stop eating the daft things that you ate. You know, it was always somebody's birthday, so there'd be cake in, or there'd be a box of chocolates. Stopped all that. I've got a wee gym in the garage next door to this room, which has a bike, a heavy bag, and a weights bench in it. The only thing I noticed when I was thinking about that question is they all face my wine racks. The first thing in the morning, it's not too bad, but if I decide to go in there late in the afternoon, there's a hell of a lot of temptation facing me, which I don't often resist. So just generally doing that, yeah.
But then saying that's probably a good incentive to be looking at the wine, thinking if I get this done, I can crack on with that.
That is the great theory of it. sometimes it's looking at it, thinking, oh, to heck with it. That looks a more interesting bottle than hitting that heavy bag for 20 minutes.
Oh dear. Well, well done on your weight loss. Well done, George, because you're right. You just, especially if you're sitting about court and there's the tea trolley and all those cakes that those ladies up in Dundee have.
Absolutely. There's always something on the go.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so that stopped it. Even if I'm not, for example, playing golf, if it's a nice morning, I'll go out and have a walk for an hour just to do that. So it's just basically that gentle stuff, really.
Good stuff. Question number 13 is, what advice would you give on dealing with challenging clients?
I think once a challenging client, always a challenging client. So I've not got much experience of them mellowing. I always try to be uber polite to them, sort of as against their aggression. I can't swear that it always worked, that I always managed that. But professionally, what I would do is make sure that everything was noted. And if anything was agreed as how matters were to proceed, I would send them a letter saying, following today's meeting and this discussion, this is what we've agreed to do. And that was as much for self-preservation as anything else. Because as sure as God made little green apples, there would follow a complaint. In the early days, it was just to the Law Society. And now we've got the SLCC. So you're going to get that. And I always try to make sure that the file notes were pristine. And if it was, for example, counsel, I would say, counsel, give me a note, about what we've discussed at this consultation. And we were all protected that way. So uber politeness and looking after myself, I think, is the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, have you ever felt physically threatened by a client, George, in your career?
No, never. All the years I did criminal law, 40 odd years, I never at any time felt physically threatened, or indeed was ever threatened by a client. So no, and I've spoken to a lot of lawyers about this, and a lot of them have said that they have never been threatened either, that if the client knows you're doing a good job, it's always somebody else that's made the decision that's going against you. It's the jury, or it's the judge or the sheriff. So truthfully, no, I've never felt threatened by a client, no.
That's good. No, I think that's the thing. Our job's difficult in that you can often be delivering bad news, but I think they appreciate that you're on their side and it is your job, and sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah. And I always give them the analogy of, a doctor often has to give a patient bad news. I'm sorry, the test was positive. We're quite akin to that from time to time, and I always try to soften the blow that way.
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy to make, actually. Yeah. Good tip. Remember that.
So even the most vicious, violent of them tended to accept that.
Yeah.
They were all right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Question 14 is, would you recommend law as a career?
Our field of law is challenging, Edith, with the fee structure and whatnot. So I wouldn't recommend it if someone wants to come in and make a fortune. But where else would you meet the characters that we've met along the road? From the clients through the practitioners through to the judges. It's been a wonderful journey. It's been a great journey. What I would recommend is the law degree. I think if someone wants a useful degree, then a law degree is a fantastic tool, because you can go into so many fields of employment or areas of work with a law degree, probably more than anything else. So I would certainly recommend a law degree, and then have a look at your options after that. If you want a great laugh and if you want good fun, do the criminal law. If you want to be a millionaire, go and do some corporate stuff. I think that's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did it because I didn't know what to do. I'll come on to this in a minute. And my head teacher, my headmaster, his daughter was doing law, And he said, she's having great fun. Why don't you go and do that? I thought, that sounds good.
Really?
So yeah, literally, and I went down to see the dean of the law faculty, and he said, yeah, see the places you've got, give them up and just come here. And that's how informal it was. And I did it. Not knowing I wanted to be a lawyer, just think that'll be interesting.
Uh-huh.
But then, as I said, coming from Lougheed, I built my practice up on people I knew, people that, that's a true story. That's dead. I remember coming from a 21st. My wife and I were just married, and I was in a hall. I'd torn ankle ligaments playing football, and it was in a hall, and I limped home because it was like 500 yards from where we lived at the time. And by the time I got in, the phone was going, and it was the police to say they'd lifted 4 people who I had just left. But by the time I'd limped home, there was a stushy, and they were all rolling about the street with the cops. And I said, that's impossible. I've just left them. They're in custody. So that's how I built my practice, on people that I knew and people that I was brought up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, it's incredible. Question, where were you? We're talking about law. Question number 15 is, what aspects of your job bring you the most satisfaction?
I think probably harking back to the success. I think if you have the ear of the court, and if the court accepts your submissions and they respect you, I think if your clients like you and respect you, I think if your opponents like and respect you, that gives me the most satisfaction. I was the worst businessman in the world. I didn't bother with the accounts or anything. I still can't read a set of accounts. My partner's probably been ripping me off for years. I don't know. I just liked going in and doing the job. And, the professional rush I got was from doing the job. And if I did a good job, then that was all the satisfaction I needed.
Yeah. I know. I think generally speaking, obviously there'll be exceptions, but I don't know that lawyers make the best business people. I think, you're either one or the other.
I have a partner who is that not one penny goes out that firm without him knowing about it. And we all joke about him, but it's the best thing that ever happened to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
You need people like that. Yeah.
Oh,
oh dear. Question 16, George, is, what skill should every lawyer have or learn?
How to deal with people, Edith. We deal with, particularly in the solicitor's office, you maybe get 8, 9, 10 different people coming in of an afternoon for appointments, and each one of them is different, and each one of them has different problems and react to their problems differently. And I think you've got to be able to deal with all of them. So I would say learn people's skills. You have to be firm with some people. You have to cozy other people in. I suppose you get it with experience, I suspect. But I think that's the most important thing. People skills and preparation for the court, because the judges now, the sheriffs are now too good. You can't wing it. If you go in. We learned that we got a new generation of sheriffs about 10, 15 years ago in Dundee, much more professional than the others, who were lovely and good sheriffs. But these guys were professional lawyers that came in, and you couldn't wing it. So I think that's the second element: prepare and know your case. You might not be right, but at least you'll be able to go down fighting. Yeah. And they'll know you've prepared for it. I think that's the 2 things I would suggest.
Good stuff. Okay, question number 17. Favourite chocolate bar?
This might be controversial, but it's a double-decker. I think that's the Marmite of chocolate bars. You either hate them or you love them. And sometimes when, somebody's going to the shops and you say, get a double-decker, they either recoil in horror or they're part of the double-decker club. So that's mine.
And has that always been your favourite?
Yeah, for years and years. Yeah, since they came out, Edith.
Really?
And when Cadbury's introduced the foil bag of mini double deckers, which you could keep in the central console of your car, that was really like dying and going to heaven.
It's not really a chocolate bar that's really on my radar. I remember them when I was wee. It was quite, I don't know, it seems to me that all chocolate bars have got much smaller since I've got bigger.
Definitely.
I bet double decker was something that you could never eat in one go, or I couldn't. But
there you go. That was it. When you didn't have much money, you could keep half of it in your pocket for later on. Did you 2 days?
Oh dear. Question number 18 is, what job would you be terrible at, George?
Remember I said I can't put a plug on?
Uh-huh.
Well, the job I know I'd be dreadful at would be a dentist. Don't laugh. I was accepted at Edinburgh unconditionally to do dentistry and medicine. Okay.
Right.
But I also applied to Dundee, and I was invited in for an interview. Now remember, I'm a 17-year-old boy from Lochee to the dental school. And when I went in the dean's office, it looked the size of a football pitch to me. So the dean was sitting behind his big desk, and I sat down, and he was a terrible mumbler, Edith.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept saying, pardon. And as I couldn't understand him, he was getting more and more irate, which meant he mumbled more. And it wasn't going very well, and I knew it wasn't going very well. And then he threw a set of broken teeth onto the desk and said, put them together. And by that time I knew I wasn't there, I wasn't going there. So I said to him, oh, you've got hold of the wrong end of the stick. I said, I'm not a dentist yet, I don't know anything about teeth, and I'm not very good at jigsaws. So at that, he shouted, get out, get out. So as I walked out, as I got near his door, the door of the office, remember the wee bells on a hotel reception, the wee brass bells, and you hit the button on the top. He shouted, ring the bell. And I said, ring the bell yourself, and walked out. But unknown to me, and I swear this is true, he didn't have any legs. His secretary used to wheel him in the wheelchair and put him on the chair behind his desk. And he had to phone his secretary to come down and ring the bell because she'd removed his wheelchair. But his secretary was on a tea break, and it took 20 minutes to get the next candidate. And I know that because the next candidate was a girl who was at school with me and who told me this. Now, I left there, met one of my pals, we went wandering through the town, and I went home. By the time I got home, the letter of rejection was hand-delivered to my mum's house. And then I realised that science wasn't my great thing anyway. I don't know why. Probably some romantic notion of being a doctor. And that's when I went to my head teacher and said, look, my science isn't good enough for any of this. And literally, you could not let me loose with a drill near someone's tooth. You couldn't do it. And over that weekend, it dawned on me, and that's when he said, go and I'll speak to the Dean of the Law Faculty, and the rest is history.
Amazing.
So most definitely a dentist, without shadow of a doubt.
So you're just a bit ham-fisted, George?
Oh, and my brain's not wired to what, if I get something from IKEA, my wife puts it up. I can't look at the plans and decipher them, Edith.
Oh, brilliant. Oh,
shocker.
Thank goodness.
I go about, if we ever go to B&Q, I go about and I quite loudly say, I need a pound of 3/4 inch nails so that the men going past will think I know how to make things. And it's not just the front, it's an act.
Well, the good folks at Dundee will be relieved to hear you didn't get accepted during that interview for the dentistry.
I'd have been in the jail.
Fantastic. Oh dear. Okay, question 19, George, is what's your favourite animal? And I know you've got an animal. You have to...
She's not here. She's away. She's away out. So I know the qualification, so I can't say her. So I would say definitely an orangutan.
Right.
Since Clint Eastwood and Clyde, I've just loved orangutans. And I've often thought I'd quite like one. And if I went to the golf, I always thought I could swing through the trees, with me. I'd be playing the golf down the tree-lined fairways, and it would just swing through the trees and then get back in the car and we'd come home. So
it could even carry your clubs, I suppose.
The only thing is it'd be no use if it was up the tree.
No, that's the problem.
I'd have to have a pile of bananas or something with me, but definitely an orangutan, Edith. No question.
Have you ever seen a live one, a real one?
Only in the zoo at Jersey. They had ones. They had a troop of them there, if that's what the collective noun is. And fascinated. I could have stayed there all day. In fact, I suspect they'd have come along with a pole and moved me on. Pushed me down the road. Let the bairns see them. I think. Wonderful.
Well, that's interesting. And but you've got your lovely black Labrador. What's her name again?
Darcy.
Darcy, yeah. So
for the first 6 months of her life, she thought her name was Darcy No, because that's all you said. And people say she named after the ballerina. Say anything but. No, I don't know where that name. My wife chose it, but she's certainly no ballerina. She's a dog that looks at you, when you whistle and say, right, come here. And she looks at you, and if she could speak, she'd say, yeah, 5 minutes. I'm coming, just leave me alone. And you have to wait for her. She's the most unlab lab. She doesn't swim, she doesn't retrieve. The only lab feature she's got is she eats anything, Edith.
Does she?
She tried to eat a dead seal on Tensmuir Beach once.
Oh, no.
She was nibbling it. We thought it was somebody had a campfire and it was a log. I thought she was eating charcoal, which they do. But when we came back, went and had a look, and it was a big dead seal. Oh, it's horrible.
Good. So I know labs are renowned for just eating anything, aren't they?
Oh, she's no off switch.
No.
No off switch at all. When my grandson comes and he's sitting at the table eating, she goes and sits beside him because she knows that he'll drop her food.
Uh-huh.
She'll sit and she'll cry and he'll, there you go. And it's a big game to him and she gets more food. That's her.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's lovely and a great nature, but throwing little bugger at times, honestly.
Oh dear. Oh, well, I'm sorry we didn't get to see her, and I've shipped Mabel out because she's a proper pet.
I've seen pictures of Mabel. Yeah. So I'll stick with my orangutan just now.
Stick with your orangutan. Good stuff, George. All right. Well, we've now reached the last question of our quiz, and that is, what question should we have included in the quiz?
I thought about that. It would be interesting if you were to ask people, what talent or skill would you like to have that you don't have? Okay. And the reason I suggest that is I would love to be able to play a musical instrument. Right. Or in fact, to sing anything musical. I'd love to go in to a karaoke bar and own the place instead of driving people out. Or I'd love to be able to play the guitar, Edith. We've got about 5 guitars in this house. And now and again I'll pick it up and I don't know where to start. It's these hands again. And if I'm in on my own, I've been known to plug an electric guitar into the wee practice amp. And thank God this is a detached house, or again the police would be called, and just make a racket. But it's not a tune, and it's not a succession of notes or anything, just hopeless. But I'd love to be able to do that.
Did you ever have the opportunity at school or anything to play any kind of instrument?
No. No, there was no. I think that must have come later. I know that kids are allowed or can play violin and that sort of stuff now, but it was never on offer when I was at school. And again, I think at that time, honestly, we were playing football all the time. I was playing for the school in the morning, playing amateur in the afternoon, and playing Sunday league on the Sunday. So there wasn't much time. It's just something I've always loved to do, and I would never be able to do it.
That's what you. But do you feel as if you've got it in you, George? I mean, do you think you are musical, or is it just something that you wish you were?
Oh no! I'd honest to God, I'd love to be able to sing. When we go to Spain to play golf, the last pub before we get back to the hotel is a karaoke bar, and it's a dump. But there's every Tuesday night there, all the good singers come down, and I just sit and I'm in awe of them. And I'm a guitar nerd, Edith. I can go to a concert and tell you what model of guitar the lead guitarist playing. I can tell you, it's a Gibson SG, and I know all that, but I can't play it. And that's the skill I would love to have had.
Yeah. Oh. Well, you never know. You might, now that you've given up, not given up, but you're taking life a bit more quieter work-wise. You never know. You might find yourself playing an instrument. And if you do, you'll need to come back on.
If I do, I'll give you a shout. I'll come back on.
Yeah, you will. You can play whatever it is you've chosen.
Absolutely.
The kazoo or whatever.
Oh, triangle.
Oh, George, well, you've been the most brilliant guest. Thank you so much. That's
really enjoyed it. Thank you for asking me.
You are very welcome. And I know that there'll be lots of people who will tune in to watch this once we release it. But it's so nice to see you, and you stay well, and I hope your family are well, and little Leo especially, and I will hopefully see you soon, George.
Hopefully. Thanks again.
Thank you. Care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.